The Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Egypt's president caught on tape making controversial comments, a victory for newborns' health in a circumcision controversy, the senator's wife and her many pictures, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. A measure to help protect newborn babies from a rare and controversial circumcision ritual has won a challenge in federal court. The decision allows the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to distribute literature warning of the dangers of the circumcision ritual and to require that parents of children on whom the ritual is performed sign a consent form acknowledging they are aware of the risks involved. The ritual, mitzitza b'feh, is the direct oral suction of the circumcision wound by the mohel, a practice most mohels stopped doing for health reasons some time ago, but that is still maintained by some ultra-Orthodox mohels. According to the City Department of Health, 12 reported cases of herpes infections have resulted from the ritual in the past 12 years, with 2 resulting in the death of the newborn and 2 resulting in long-term brain damage. The decision in federal court to allow for this intervention from the City Health Department came just a few days after the announcement of the latest such infection by the department. The lawsuit was filed by several ultra-Orthodox groups in October. A temporary injunction had kept the Department of Health from implementing the consent rule, which it is now free to do. The ultra-Orthodox groups have said they will appeal. In her 93-page opinion, Judge Naomi Rice Buchwald wrote that the so-called strict scrutiny standard for First Amendment cases was not at issue in this case because, quote, the regulation neither compels speech nor impermissibly burdens plaintiffs' free exercise of religion. Nowhere in the regulation are mohels required to provide a consent form to parents or even inform them that such a form exists. She added, this is a case where societal harms, namely neonatal HSV-1 infection, and the undermining of parents' ability to make informed decisions about protecting their children's health are legitimate concerns of government for reasons quite apart from discrimination. Meantime, in Baltimore, a physical education teacher at a Jewish high school was arrested due to allegations he had sex with a female student for 4 years. 33-year-old Foy Minton of the Baltimore Hebrew School has been dean of students and athletic director. The student is said to have been 16 years old when Minton allegedly began having sex with her in 2009. In Israel news, a tunnel was discovered by Israel that was dug from Gaza and presumed to be intended for terror activity. According to the Israel Defense Force's statement on Twitter, the tunnel, large enough to carry people, is the same kind of tunnel used in 2006 to ambush IDF soldiers and kidnap Gilad Shalit. Over on the West Bank, the man who is seen as most responsible for reforms that have contributed to reducing terror operations there, Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Salam Fayyad, complained that Arab countries are not meeting their financial commitments to the PA, currently standing at around $100 million, and that, quote, the absence of these funds threatens the Palestinian Authority's ability to carry out its obligations to the Palestinian people, including helping them stay in the territory. That sum of $100 million is also being held by Israel in funds collected from Palestinian taxes, which Israel said it is using to pay debts owed by Palestinians to the Israel Electric Company. The Arab League issued a statement calling on Israel to release those funds to the Palestinian Authority. Another Middle East leader, Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi, was revealed to have made some aggressively anti-Semitic remarks in a 2010 video brought to light recently by the organization Memri. In the video, according to Memri's translation, Morsi called Israelis, quote, these bloodsuckers who attack the Palestinians, these warmongers, the descendants of apes and pigs. The comments were in the context of a discussion of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, which Morsi called, quote, futile, saying, the Zionists buy time and gain more opportunities as the Palestinians, the Arabs, and the Muslims lose time and opportunities and they get nothing out of it. Regarding the West-supported government of the Palestinian Authority, Morsi said, this authority was created by the Zionist and American enemies for the sole purpose of opposing the will of the Palestinian people and its interests. Morsi added regarding Israelis, quote, we should employ all forms of resistance against them. And regarding the legitimacy of the State of Israel, Morsi said, the Zionists have no right to the land of Palestine. There is no place for them on the land of Palestine. What they took before 1947 to 48 constitutes plundering, and what they are doing now is a continuation of this plundering. By no means do we recognize their green line. The land of Palestine belongs to the Palestinians, not to the Zionists, adding, we want a country for the Palestinians on the entire land of Palestine. Morsi had recently been credited with brokering a ceasefire between Hamas, the organization labeled a terrorist group by the U.S. and Israel that rules Gaza, and Israel. The recent conflict between Israel and Hamas was seen as strengthening Hamas in Palestinian politics over Fatah, the party of Mahmoud Abbas and Salam Fayyad that rules in the West Bank. On Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Jay Carney condemned Morsi's remarks.
We strongly condemn the remarks that then Muslim Brotherhood leader Morsi made in 2010. The language that we have seen is deeply offensive. We completely reject these statements, as we do any language that espouses religious hatred. This discourse, and this is a broader point, this kind of discourse has been acceptable in the region for far too long and is counter to the goal of peace. President Morsi should make clear that he respects people of all faiths and that this type of rhetoric is not acceptable or productive in a democratic Egypt. Since taking office, President Morsi has reaffirmed Egypt's commitment to its peace treaty with Israel in both word and deed, and has proven willing to work with us towards shared objectives, including a ceasefire during the crisis in Gaza last year. These commitments are essential for our bilateral relations with Egypt, as well as for stability in the region.
In the artistic portrayal of Middle East conflict, the Showtime television series Homeland won the Best Drama Series Golden Globes Award this week. Series star Claire Danes won an award for Best Actress in a Drama Series, and Damian Lewis won for Best Actor in a Drama. The series is based on an Israeli television show, Hatufim, or Prisoners of War, which Homeland's producer mentioned in accepting the award. Going from moving pictures to stills, we all have snapshots of our lives and those we come to meet. For the wife of Senator Frank Lautenberg of New Jersey, the pictures she's taken tell somewhat more significant stories, as Meredith Gansman reports.
Bonnie Engelbart Lautenberg often witnesses history being made close up. 20 years ago, while attending the Oslo Accord signing ceremony with her husband, Senator Frank R. Lautenberg, she realized the power of photography to capture those historical moments.
So this is one of the photographs that I took when I was in Washington in 1993, September 13th, 1993, when I was at the White House for the Israel-Palestinian Peace Accord. It was so exciting to have history in my lens.
But how will history remember today's lawmakers? Lately, U.S. senators have become more infamous for their partisan fighting than for the legislation they develop. But since 2006, Lautenberg has been preserving the senators' legacies and their work that's changed our lives. Now she's exhibiting that work in a show entitled How They Changed Our Lives, Senators as Working People, which debuted at Manic Contemporary in Jersey City in 2012. The idea for the project came when Lautenberg realized she did not know who had written the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1992, even though she was quite familiar with the law itself and learned that it was authored by Senator Tom Harkin.
So if I, really didn't know all the legislation that all these senators authored or sponsored, then the public for sure did not know.
Interviewing all 113 U.S. senators of the 109th and 110th Congresses, each lawmaker's photograph also notes the legislation for which they will be most remembered.
Chuck Schumer and Hillary Clinton were both most proud of that they got $21.4 billion to rebuild the World Trade Center.
Her husband, Frank R. Lautenberg, has his law banning smoking on airplanes as his legacy piece of legislation. Also evident in some of the photographs are the senators' pride in their family history as well as their own political work.
This picture of Senator Kennedy is just, was very, very tough to take because in the background are all his family members that were killed, his brother, the president, his brother Robert, and Martin Luther King and John Kennedy Jr. is in these pictures. It was very emotional.
To see more from how senators have changed our daily lives, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Finally, the key questions of who we are as Jews and what we believe comprise numerous works by Jewish philosophers. Whether or not the two most famous of those philosophers, Maimonides and Spinoza, are in fundamental agreement or disagreement is a matter tackled by University of Dallas professor Joshua Perrins in his new book, Maimonides and Spinoza, Their Conflicting Views of Human Nature. Perrins stopped by the studio recently for an interview, and here are the highlights. Getting into some of the details of the arguments of your book, that we have something that a lot of people don't really think about. They just kind of, I think, accept it as a given in the Jewish community today. But what exactly is a Jewish philosophy of God?
Right. That is a very difficult and complicated matter. Some people actually question whether there is such a thing as Jewish philosophy. I think in many ways what you find as you study Maimonides more and more is that he didn't really see Judaism and philosophy in the kind of harmony that we tend to think of them as being in today. In a certain way, what he did, what was really revolutionary about his argument, was to inject philosophy into Judaism. He didn't in the end harmonize them. He in a way let the tension between them stand. We live in a world in which we tend to think of there being Jewish philosophy to a great extent because people like Spinoza in effect softened the edges of what religion is. This is one of the reasons that I argue in the book that he isn't really a promoter of the new Jewish identity, because in a way what he promoted was the Judeo-Christian identity that everyone talks about.
Right, and so what are some of the differences about the nature of God that you explore between Maimonides and Spinoza, and what I think the different Judeo-Christianity of today?
Right. In the case of Spinoza, he's really infamous for having argued that God is all of nature and that he is body. In effect, Maimonides, the emphasis of Maimonides is that God is incorporeal. This was in a certain way, to some extent, unprecedented in the Jewish community to stress it so incredibly strongly and to require it of all Jews. So why in the world would Spinoza have been arguing that God is corporeal? That was in a way to collapse God into nature and to really silence people's interest in God as some kind of transcendent object. That in a way is one of the main things that I'm arguing in the book, that Maimonides is really interested in promoting God as a transcendent object. He's interested in cultivating people's love of God, whereas Spinoza, if anything, he's undercutting the very idea that there are transcendent objects.
And what you're saying about Spinoza is that in preparing Judaism for the modern age, he basically removed the idea of, he tried to remove the idea of God as something that could divide us, of religion as something that makes us, unapproachable or unapproached, and that if we play things down a bit, I guess, that we could all live a little more harmoniously.
That actually flows from this claim about getting rid of God as a real religious object. In monotheistic communities, different monotheistic communities view God in different ways. We disagree over God. So if you deny him as a transcendent object, you in effect soften people's readiness to disagree with one another. So one of the main things that he ends up arguing is he absorbs love into what he calls endeavor or konatus, or the desire to preserve yourself. So he, in a way, he de-transcendentalizes, or he brings down our desires so that they don't have very high objects. God as something beautiful and transcendent.
You can see the full interview with Joshua Perrins under the weekly news category on the Jewish Channel On Demand on cable. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 291, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and now on Comcast Cable in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.